they're very excited to point to those statistics about Black people who would like to continue to use police in their neighborhoods. When we look at Black people who are all of a sudden demanding, more resources for education, more jobs in the community, universal health care, those political leaders are usually not interested in using statistical support for Black communities for those progressive causes. And so what happens is that there's a devaluing and a divestment in all the other resources that Black and brown people, working class people demand in their neighborhoods. And then they hold up one specific statistic that they're willing to pay for in order to call it public safety. When actually, I imagine if we ask Black people and brown people all over the country, well, would you rather have more police or universal daycare? Would you rather have more police or education that's properly funded and culturally important? When you start asking more nuanced questions, the answers shift in our communities. And I think that we should ask more nuanced questions.
If we're really going to have reform and make this a real conversation, because this cop who we were talking about in Baltimore's on a consent decree. So if they're supposed to be getting rid of people like that, those actions aren't supposed to exist. We're supposed to be having these community conversations so that these two groups can come together, and it's just not happening. It's not happening. We see the same things going on over and over again. And, again, police officers need to live in places that mirror where they work, and we also need to figure out how to get these guys some therapy because they are bonkers.
I think we're live.
We are live, yes.
I think we're live right now. So I'm happy to be here with you. I don't want to botch your bio, so it would be great if you just let everyone know a little bit about yourself, and then I'll follow up and we can get right into it.
Yes, of course. Thank you everyone so much for attending tonight. Sorry we had some technical difficulties. There was an echo that we were trying to combat, and I think we won. So thank you for toughing it out. My name is Derica Purnell. I'm a human rights lawyer. I'm a writer. I'm an organizer. I'm currently the author of this precious book, Becoming Abolitionists, Police Protests and the Pursuit of Freedom, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. So again, thank you so much for attending.
My name is Dee Watkins. So happy to be here. I'm a memoirist, professor, lifelong Baltimore resident. I was really looking forward to this conversation so much that I'm having it while I'm on vacation. This is how much I wanted to have this conversation. Reading your yeah. People always ask me stuff like, "Oh, what do you do for self-care?" I work on vacation. That's what I do for self-care. But I was really excited about having this conversation because I think it's very important. And if you check in, or if you to the people who paid attention to the clip where I was talking about policing on the television show, I was talking about policing through the lens of, it's very hard for me to see society subscribing to the idea of abolition. And a long time ago, I went on television and I said, police officers are worthless, throw them out of the trash. And I got all this hate mail, and it was cool. It was cool. But I think that the way I talked about, I didn't have the language that you have when you wrote this book. So I think this book is very important. And I think the best thing for you to do, just so we can help people and allow people understand where you're coming from, is to talk about the moment when you realized abolition was for you.
Oh, wow. That's such a good question. What it suggests is that I was like a reformist one day, right? And then I realized that abolition was it. And honestly, it was quite messy, right? It was me grappling with, like, what are we going to do if we don't have police? Like, what is our society going to look like? Am I going to be safe? And I'm just grateful that I was around people who had the language for much longer than I did, who pushed anything differently about the world, who made me understand that, well, this is sort of a process. And I remember a few moments in Baltimore, being in Baltimore was one of them, where I was so happy that the reforms we were fighting for were happening. I was like, man, like, look at all this Black leadership. Look at these cops getting indicted. Like, we're going to win. We're sending cops to jail. We got trials going on. We got more diversity in the police forces. We got consent decree after consent decree. I thought that we were winning. And then I saw police were still killing people, right? People were still dying, even with all of our wins, even with all of our changes, all of the community policing. Police were still killing about 3 people a day. They were still, doing the constitutional work of enforcing evictions, kicking people out their homes, moving people in our community who are homeless from out in the downtown centers to parks that are dark at night, right? This was the work of policing. And so I think some of those connections started happening for me in places like Baltimore, in places like South Africa, where I saw the easy limitation of diversity, right? Here you have all Black police officers hurting a nation of Black people. And I said, oh, well, we can't just fight for more police. It's their power, right? That's what's at stake. We can get all the Black cops in the world, all the women cops, the gayest cops in the world. If they still have the power to hurt Black people, to hurt women, to hurt gay people, that's not really changing anything. And in fact, it may be harder for us to call them racist because they're Black, right? And so it's those connections, watching us win actually the reforms and watching the violence continues. That's when I was like, well, I don't think it's enough for us to fight for safer violence, right? I don't think it's enough for us to fight to punish cops just after they kill someone. We have to figure out how to fight for something deeper and more transformative. And I feel very, very lucky that the people who I was around at the time were pushing me to think about that.
I think the argument holds so much weight coming from you because you didn't grow up as this rich person with like all of this money. And I make this joke a lot because like someone who says defund police had called the police on me before. So it's like the math ain't mathing. So it's like you can have these conversations when you live in these spaces where I don't know, Mayberry, right? Where these places where you feel like nothing ever happens. Or these people who own property, they feel like, oh, well, the police are going to protect the bad guys from my property. So it's very hard for them to imagine that. But you ladies, you lay the argument out perfectly in the book where you talk about, well, what are they going to do with all the rapes and murders? And you like, with plot twist, they're not solving the rapes and murders. So could you speak to that?
Yes.
How ineffective these departments are.
Yes, of course. So I was frankly very tired and very frustrated with politicians, especially Black politicians who would say, the people in the suburbs want abolition for people who live in the hood, right? I got so tired of that story because one, it erases all of the Black abolitionist survivors who are living in the hood, not just from the hood, but currently living in the hood right now, who are trying to figure out how to organize against violence from policing, violence in our streets. And so it's just like you're making police abolition as white, utopic, unrealistic thing when so many of us draw our ideas, the scholarship, the organizing from Black feminists like Angela Davis and Ruth Wilson Gilmore and Miriam Kaba and Beth Ritchie, right? And so they conveniently skip over the work of all these people and say that, oh, it's just like a white thing, people have resources. And so I thought it was important to talk about, how I grew up, where I grew up. And it wasn't as if like I went to Harvard Law School and then got a corporate job and then lived in something like, so I lived in Southeast DC on Condon Terrace, AKA the Alley, right? The Alley. This is the place that was known as being one of the highest homicide rates in the city, right? And so because of the work that I was doing, I was flying back and forth to St. Louis while I was working at Advancement Project and still trying to make sure that people who live in neighborhoods with other high homicide rates like understood what it meant to like abolish the police. So I wanted to tell that story because it's on the one end, for some people, unfortunately, it gives me legitimacy to say that, oh, I grew up in the hood, I grew up poor, I grew up Black, my family's still Black, my family's still poor. And then for another group of people, it's like, oh, you have a Harvard law degree, right? So if you're saying something about abolition, then maybe we can take it like 5% more seriously. right, than all these other people. But then for another group of people, it's a window, right? It's like, oh man, okay. And this person who grew up calling the police, who live in Black neighborhoods right now, who are trying to figure out how to stop violence right now, and this person is interested or open to the ideas of abolition, then maybe I could be too. And so I really appreciate that you affirm, me telling that part of the story. And then the other part about sexual violence and murders, I had an interview the other day with NPR affiliate in Baltimore. He was telling me that, a public radio affiliate rather, and he was saying that, there was a shooting a couple of houses down from him, and the police came and they couldn't find the body. They went hospital to hospital to hospital, couldn't find the body. And he said, if we abolish the police, then like, who's gonna go basically search for the bodies? And I said, well, did they save anyone's life, or are they just trying to find a body and they can't even find it, right? And so in places like Baltimore and places like St. Louis, the clearance rate for murders, for homicides, is like 30 to 40%, which means that people are just arrested and charged, not even convicted. And then that incentivizes police to pin extra murders on other people that they do catch, to try to say that we're solving murders, we're effective at that. And so it's heartbreaking, because our communities deserve so much more than the cheap way of just funding a jobs program by getting a lot of cops to not actually solve murders. But we actually know what does keep people safe. We know jobs, we know better education, we know quality housing, we know food. All of these investments, right, can actually de-escalate tension in our homes, right? Stop people from going off. But instead, they continue to fund the police. And it's tragic. They're getting over on Black people and poor people, and it's tragic.
So if you had a chance to implement this, right, on like a massive scale, what steps do you think you would take? I would think that the first big thing that needs to be done, because America is so stuck in love with criminal justice. It's like kind of like you wrote in the book. It's like, yo, it's the only, like you said, you had a friend who was like, yo, this is like the only job I could get. Like they were the only people that were hiring. And it comes with power. Right? What would be some of the first big steps to dismantle this system? I always think about disarming the police. Because literally, like, so, and I've said this 1,000 times, you put a gun on me and rob me, it's gonna be one of two things gonna happen. Either I'm gonna poke my chest out, I'm gonna come get you, or you gonna lay me down, or I'm gonna just say, you know what, three things. So I'm gonna say, you know what, it's a loss. I know I'm never gonna call the police. I know they're not gonna knock on my door with a trench coat and like a notepad. I know they're not gonna find the person and get my stuff. Like I know that the only reason why I would ever call them would be for insurance purposes. Right. So I feel like if somebody breaks in my car, breaks in like one of the properties I own, and he's still like whatever, like a TV or something, I want, if the TV is worth more than whatever the deductible is, I kind of want my money back. So and I don't think you don't need a gun to fill that paperwork out. You don't need a gun. You don't need a gun when I get in a car accident and you come in telling me it's between me and this person. Like you don't need a gun for that. And I know they don't pull up to shootings and jump out the car in the middle of shootings and do all that shit that Bruce Willis do. Like I know it doesn't happen. So what I was thinking is, how come like nobody had any like a big conversation around disarming them? Like apparently, they have guns and apparently they don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, well, Alex Vitale in The End of Policing, he recommends disarming the police, especially in traffic stops. He's like, look,
right,
we don't. So much of what policing does, like you just said, don't require guns. The New York Times did a report last summer, and they found that less than 4% of police work involved violent offenses. Right, so 96% was just all of this stuff that has nothing to do with what our public considers to be violent. And so when I think about police abolition, there's like the police specific stuff that could happen, and then there's the broader societal stuff that needs to happen. So police specific stuff that needs to happen is that, well, we need to reduce our encounters with police. We have to figure out how to stop those interactions. part of that is interrogating, why do people even call 911 in the first place, right? Why are people inviting police, right? And a lot of times it's because they don't have a lot of other options. So the police become the default response to come in. Police also surveil and patrol our neighborhood. So we have to like figure out how to slow that down, how to combat that. Why are the police here? Well, the police are here because there are bullets shot, there are shots fired here, this many times a month. Well, let's figure out why people are shooting like that. Like getting to the heart of that is not the same as putting a cop in a neighborhood to station to surveil, because people shoot around the police, right? So that's not a good preventative method. So how do we reduce our police encounters? How do we undermine resources for the police, right? How do we take away more than, oh, thank you. Wow, this is nice. I'm getting like research. What was I just saying? Yeah, so how do we reduce resources, take funding away from the police, and build solutions that actually get to the heart of problems immediately? And the issue is sometimes people say, well, Derica, we need to make sure that we build all the stuff we want first before we start taking resources away from the police. And that's not, it scares me, because the police will disrupt the things that we're building because they want to maintain legitimacy, like they're in control, like they're the only ones who can fix problems. And so we have to make sure that we're investing in like street violence interrupting programs, community mediation programs. There are endless ways that people are addressing sexual violence through transformative justice, through restorative justice. So those are short-term but very impactful programs and opportunities that reduce, prevent violence, and hold people accountable after it happens. But then there's the larger structural issues that we have to get to, because the police, they primarily manage inequality. They're managing people who have been forced out of the economy. They're managing people who've been forced out of housing, forced out of schools. They're locking up 10 million people a year to put them in cages because our like I said, our jobs, they don't have jobs. They're kicking them out of our schools. They're kicking them out of homes. And so we have to figure out how to make sure we have sweeping policy changes to change the structures that we have, to make sure that there is not the level of inequality that we have in this country, because that's what police ultimately go and do. They manage the people who are being exploited and being extracted. And so we have to make the big sweeping changes over time to then reduce those carceral institutions that we rely on to solve social problems.
Why can't America just admit that it's a failed system? Or it's multiple failed systems in every different city, municipality, whatever, across the country. It's a collection of failed systems. Why can't people say that? Why do politicians still feel the need to say, and Joe Biden is, whatever. The other
Negro, I know.
Yo, I know. The other day, not maybe like couple weeks ago, Joe Biden, literally a person asked him nothing, and his response was, well, all cops aren't bad. Most of them are good. It's only a small few bad apples. And it's like, why? It's like, to be a politician, do they implant that in your brain? Like, do they not understand that if the whole system is broken, then it doesn't matter if you try to be good at your job or not, because you're part of a bigger system that doesn't work. It's like, what if I have 500 DVDs and maybe like 5 other DVDs are cracked, but I'm putting them all into the same DVD player that's broken in half? The system is broken, so none of them are going to play, not even the ones that allegedly work. What is that?
The thing is that I would say Joe Biden will probably agree to some extent that the system is broken, which is why we need to keep fixing it, right? To keep reforming it, because it's just broken. So we got to get it to work for all Americans. That's something I see him say. I'll see him say. Then there's other Americans who I probably would say mostly of them I agree with, who would say this is how the system was designed to work, right? So we know that police emerged from slave patrols. That wasn't a broken system. That was a very intentional system created to designed and created to go and catch people who were resisting slavery, resisting capitalism, who were rebellion, who was plotting on their masters on plantations, right? So we had to create, they had to create a system of patrols in order to control and suppress rebellion and resistance, right? And so once you have so many years of practicing that, you refine these tools, you learn how to conduct raids because you come from institutions that practice raiding cabins on plantations, looking for slaves who was trying to, turn up and have rebellion. You know how to create a system of informants because you were creating systems of informants to turn in runaways who were on the Underground Railroad, right? You know how to confiscate weapons. All these systems that police, all these tools that they still use, they emerge from a long history of exploitation and racism. And so it's like, well, the system, if it's broken, well, what is it broken? What is it designed to do? And I think policing, unfortunately, it works really well at locking up people, right? It works really well at managing inequality. And so then when we reform the police, what we're essentially doing is trying to make police more efficient at doing that. We're just trying to get more colorful police to do that. We're trying to get nicer, kinder police to do that. So at some point, we have to say,
I love the James Baldwin quote you used. I love the James. I haven't read that before. Thank you for that. How's it go? Don't send a black. If they send it a cop, please
yes.
God.
Yes. It's so funny. I heard that, so many times growing up from my uncles, even from my little brother, it's just like, oh man, it's a black cop. It's like, I'm definitely is about to go down. And so, yeah, it's like, we should not think of it simply as broken, because then if something's broken, your impulse is going to be to fix it. It's the whole, don't throw the whole baby out with the bathwater. But if the baby is killing people, it's like we have to be serious about what's at stake. And instead of trying to fix the police, we have to start reducing their power to be violent.
I think what I was saying is when I say broken, right, and just going off of the slave analogy, is that they had an agenda. The agenda was to oppress Black people, and they're still doing that in an extremely effective way. But now, or maybe not even just now, maybe within the past whatever amount of years, they've been stealing from their people at a high level, and they're not getting the clearance rate, and they're not solving the things they should be solving, and they are really, really, really wrapped up in the element that they're supposed to be working against. So it's like, the cop, and these are things that make the cop purists cringe, right?
Yes.
I'm working on an HBO television show about crooked cops right now, and just the conversations and the arguments that went down in the writers' room about policing was like some of the most. It was fun. It was fun because it was fun because I got an opportunity to present a perspective that's just rare, and that kind of tied into what the television show is about. Like, I got a chance to really, really, really give a perspective that a lot of people didn't think about, and we all got a chance to walk away and learn more from that experience. But it's still it's extremely difficult. Like, it's difficult even so. Like I said, I like your background so much because you went to Harvard, but also like you grounded up. You started out similar to how I started out, and you made your way, and it just gives you like the ability to speak to different sides. So if we're in Baltimore and I'm talking to the grandmother on Lanville Street, or I'm talking to the uncle, the Trove Housing Projects or something like that, and he's like, oh, well, I need them to clear the corner. And his idea is not why are they on the corner, or where are the opportunities, or what is going to happen to them, or is, another Freddie Gray going to happen, right?
Yeah.
What happened to Freddie Gray should not have Freddie Gray's whole story is a big fuck up in regards to the war on drugs, the war on drugs, and the praise for stats-based policing. Lock up as many people as you can lock up, right, to get the stats, right? So their minds, and I'm not I'm not trying to speak for all of them because there's people from all over who get, who understand these ideas. But a lot of people, their minds won't go there. They won't go there. And I think one of the things to, because there's a cop right there, Officer Kwame Rose. So, but they won't go there. And I think we need your book, and we need to figure out what do we create to be able to what do we create to be able to get this language out, or to get these ideas out so people can understand what they believe in is not working.
Yeah, well, I think part of it is starting to have conversations like this, right? It's starting to have conversations. I feel very lucky that people have been organizing around this for decades, like literally for decades, like have been trying to figure out, well, how do we be responsive to the needs of people in our communities? And then how do we, build momentum and talk about some of these issues? And like you said, there's a range of how people in our communities engage with that. Some grandmas be angry that cops are bothering people, but they still don't want the group of people like on her porch, but she don't want the cops to bother. That's an entry point. So I think what some organizers are doing now, they're just being in conversation with people and saying, hey, what will make you feel safe? Like, what will make you feel safe? Like, is it the police? Right? Do the police make you feel safe? Why is that? What do you want to be safe from? So often, especially now with the defund conversation and the abolition conversation, it's presented like a zero-sum game. Like, your options are police or nothing, right? Those are your two options. And when you already have been exploited, people, losing accreditation of their schools, getting kicked out of their house, you're going to take away police, which is the only thing that's constantly funded in your communities, the only budget that's constantly seeing an increase. You're going to take that away. And then you feel like, well, I'm not going to have nothing. And something, even if it's violent, I'm familiar with that violence. I kind of know what to expect. I don't want you to take that away, right? So it's on abolitionists, it's on people who are fighting to change our society to explain, well, it's not police or nothing. It's actually no police and lots of responses to the things that you're specifically concerned about. Lots of answers, getting to the root causes of harm, right? Trying to figure out how to stop violence, not only from police, but from our neighbors, from our churches, from our institutions, right? From our employers. Abolition is a commitment. It's a commitment to eradicate violence from police, from prisons, from surveillance, and in our communities at the same time, over time, until they're both obsolete. So we have to make sure we're clear in explaining that to people.
Something that you wrote about and something that I wrote about is coming of age in the Obama era, and feeling that the magic of that moment and what that magic felt like. And then as you get older, you study, you go places, and you learn things, and you meet new people with new experience, how you feel like that magic has been ripped away. And I told myself I'm not going to sit here and tell the whole book. I think it's an excellent book. I think you should read it. I think it's very personal. I think it's accessible, but I also think it's genius in a way that it incorporates the history that people just need to know. But the last thing I'm going to ask you before we open it up is to talk about that Obama era and what you learned coming out of that era in connection to where you are at politically right now.
Wow. Yes. So President Obama was the first president I voted for, right? He was the very first election I was able to participate in. And I was so happy. I was so ecstatic that I was like, wow, I can.
You had an Obama t-shirt? You had a t-shirt?
I had the 3-color face. It was looking to the side. It was on my computer. It was everywhere. I went to the inauguration. I was out here. I was just so amazed by this Black lawyer, who attended at Trinity. I was like, wow, like this is like, I get this person. And then I started learning actually from immigration organizers about his deportation record and about his detention record. And I said, my Obama? Like, is that who you're talking about? Like my Obama? And so I was, when I went, I went to school in Missouri. I remember was getting in fights with like young white college girls who were saying, we need to see his birth certificate. I was like crying, like defending him. Like, this is like how much of an Obama supporter I was. I did voter registration drives, like get out to vote rallies, like all of that, right? Like,
he told those white girls, "You want to show you how I'm an American? Look at my record on immigration."
Right. I didn't say that, but now I'm glad that I did it. Yes, super American, absolutely. So yeah, I was in that. I was in that first black president. It was Jeezy. It was the whole moment, right? My president.
Oh yeah, I forgot my president is black. My Lambo's blue.
Jeezy's at Morehouse with the Lamborghini. It's a whole lot happening. It was very, very, very exciting time. So I started learning about his deportation record. Then I watched students and I joined them trying to organize, to save the life of Troy Davis. Then Michelle Alexander's book comes out, The New Jim Crow, and she's critiquing colorblindness in this moment where everyone is so blissful about the election of this black president. And she's like, wait. There are 1 million black men in jail, right? So I'm just like, oh, like, okay, so what's going on? That's
the event. Is that the event where you introduced her, or are you just talking about the book in general?
Oh, that's not. I met her on her book tour when she came to my college. I introduced Angela Davis, but I met.
You introduced Angela Davis. Okay.
Yeah, but I actually.
You couldn't introduce Michelle Alexander because you introduced Angela Davis. Is that how it went? Yeah.
Yes, literally, that's the sentence. Yes. Like, you got a photogenic memory, but yes.
People, I don't even have a book on me.
Yeah, so it was that. So I was just, I was enamored, and then over time, I started learning more about the drone strikes. I started learning more about like how we had in that moment, and I say we. I was at the time talking about Democrats just had a lot of power in Congress, the executive branch, to pass so much, and we just didn't. Right? We just didn't. Right. We could have alleviated a lot of poverty, a lot of stress. And what happened? There was money to the police, the deportations continued, the drones increased. And I was just heartbroken that the person who I was so excited about changing this country was actually just another tool of it. Right? It's like, I don't know if the people who he was bombing in North Africa and Middle East, if they felt comforted because he was black, because he looked like them. And so
it's crazy, but don't make that argument with one of your aunts because they're gonna tear you up.
Listen to me. My grandmother, God rest her soul, she passed last February. Like 2 years, a year before she passed, I went to visit her at her nursing home, and I held her hand, and she said, "Baby, like, you're gonna be the next Barack Obama. I'm so proud of you." And I was like, I love you too, Grandma. I love you too, Grandma. My grandma was born in 1936. It's complicated, right? It's complicated. But my mom gets it. Like, she understands the limitations. But anyway, so yeah, it's Black people have this. If you Black and you doing good, I'm proud of you. And sometimes that gets in the way of substantive critique of the policies that Black people who get in office, from Kamala Harris to Barack Obama.
But isn't their job like policing too? If you think about it, it's like it kind of doesn't really matter who holds the position. If you're going to use the same tools that your predecessor used, then it's a broken system. Like, we need to figure something else out, right?
Yes, absolutely. When you have VP Kamala Harris at the border and telling people don't even try to be a refugee, don't try to escape the violence and harm in your communities, don't come. That's exactly what they're doing. And they're not only doing it on a domestic level, they're doing it on a global level, right? So they're deciding what sorts of militaristic interventions are happening. They're invading other people's countries. They're, bombing and creating more military bases abroad. So it's there. You're absolutely right. It is a form of policing. It's protecting. When I heard VP Kamala Harris say America is not a racist country, come on, I was like, wow.
Not to come on. She ain't hit him with the come on.
She did the shrug that she does, and it's just like, wow. Here we are watching police arrest people, drag them off of buses in Philly for not wearing a mask, right? We're watching Black people die in record numbers for a pandemic, right? We're watching so many people die in jails and prisons from a preventable pandemic, and you're saying that this is not a racist country, right? So this is it's you, yeah, this clip, you criticized Joe Biden for doing what? For interfering in a school desegregation program because he aligned with racists. So when did America stop becoming a racist country? What's the
when she got that job?
That's exactly your point. Yes.
But that's the biggest problem. Isn't that the biggest problem too? When you get some success and you're able to not have police breathing down your neck all day because you live in that exclusive whatever neighborhood, then a lot of times you lose that connection. You lose that energy, and you don't really feel the same. This is not a radical. This is not a radical person. This is, you lose, and I don't, and maybe they never was, but a lot of times when people feel like when a system works for them, that it works universally. I know that some of these systems have worked for me in my career as a professor and as a author, writer, whatever, right? But I know that the biggest part of my story is luck, and it shouldn't be that way. We should be able to just work as hard as anybody else and get the same success as other people who put the energy into things that we put into. We shouldn't have to, work 50 times as hard just to be able to, align with the person who doesn't have to work hard at all. But I want to open it up because I know a lot of people some people want to hear from you. So people who comments are popping up across the screen. I'm not really sure how the questions work, but can you see that?
I don't know if that's a question. I think someone said comment. Okay, here we go.
Okay, here we go.
What have you found to be practical daily ways to kill the cop in our head, to practice abolition in our everyday lives, relationships, alongside supporting organizers? Oh, this is a good question. What's a way to kill the cop? And I'm assuming you're quoting Miriam Kaba, kill the cop in your head and in your heart, right? Which is monitoring how you're policing other people's behaviors, ideas, bodies, all of that. A daily practice feels meditative, right? And I don't know if I have an intentional daily practice, but I know the way that I experience the most, it's in the relationships where I have hierarchy, and that's the one that I have the most hierarchy, most power in, is with my children, right? So my children, I have so much power to control what they do, where they eat, how they play, how they talk about gender, how they talk about God, how their interactions. And so I think for figuring out how to be a parent that try to work as a guide and help them thinking about how to navigate through life, rather than someone who's controlling and punishing them when they don't do something that they either haven't learned how to do or they've learned how to do it and just didn't do it this time. And so resisting the impulse to punish, right? And instead to have conversations, to ask them what do they think is fair and just, giving something that they did that may have hurt somebody. Or I'm thinking about my two boys, Juice. Juice, what you did, it hurt your younger brother Garvey. What do you think that you should do now that this has happened, right? And it's well, I think I should apologize. I think I should think about what I did. I think I should ask him if he wants a hug. I think I should ask Garvey, what would make him feel better. So taking the time, and Dee, you were saying this before we got on about patience with children, taking the time to do that, right? Instead of just being go to your room, stop talking, do this. I think that's one way I have to be intentional, especially as a parent. That's a good question.
That's a great question.
Is a comprehensive violence prevention plan, is that Mayor Scott's plan to do street violence interrupters alongside the funding more police to address crime? If that is what that is, then I don't know a lot about that specific plan. I need to actually learn more about that specific plan.
Oh yeah, you get into these Baltimore politics, you're gonna get ready to have a headache. It will literally make every braid in your head unravel. like, because and we under consent decree, which means they like fund the police, fund the police, fund. They got slogans: funding the police is fun. It's like what we got going on in Baltimore right now. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm playing a lot of catch up around Baltimore politics. I know it generally, but I'm still like, I found out about the plan just recently, actually, and so I need time to study it before I can give an opinion. But if it is funding cops alongside funding street violence interrupters, it reminds me of what you were saying earlier, Dee. Like, why is it that politicians just won't admit that this system is broken or corrupt? Like, well, because when something spectacular happens, like shooting, something tragic and spectacular, people want an answer, and police are an easy answer. It's an easy answer to default to, right? To say that this is what we're going to do right now. We're going to give more money to police. And what's sad is that you have these cities with the highest presence of police be the cities with the murders. And it's just like, well,
it don't work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. But again, something feels like, police feel like something. So this is a thing that I can do that'll make everyone at least calm down and stop asking questions. But then people don't go to the next step, which is, well, why does St. Louis and Chicago and Baltimore have so many police and so many murders? Why? How is that the case? And why do police continue to get billions of dollars to do this? And yet we're still seeing 15,000 people die every year.
Have you been watching the trial with this little twerp, this little Kyle Rittenhouse, this guy?
I have not been watching the trial. Unfortunately, I get some of the clips when I see stuff online.
Right.
But I have a capacity with trials. And this is also why I couldn't no longer do public defense work. Because being a lawyer representing a client, and we need public defenders so bad, but just watching the power of the judge and the prosecutor pretend that all of this is justice and right, it wasn't the field for me. I said, we have to have people with much more patience who are fighting to get people out the system. And the clips I've seen coming from the lawyers and coming from the prosecutor, coming from the defense, I was just like,
And the reason why I say that, because my best friend just came home from 16 years, nonviolent drug crimes. If he was white, he wouldn't have been in jail for 16 months. So his kids, he missed a huge chunks of their lives, and he's playing makeup now, and becoming reacclimated to everything that's happening. Like, the jeans are different. There's no more big jerseys. Like,
no more. 16 years ago was 2005. That's like the end of the Jabot era.
Yeah, we don't have the strap Jabot. So
yes.
So, and I brung that up. I brung that up because this is like, because I feel like, we need to abolish prisons, like jail. It doesn't work. It's another failed system. So I'm bringing this question to you because the flip side of the conversation is how people cheer and get happy when Derek Chauvin goes to prison, or when Mike Slager goes to prison, or the cops who killed Freddie Gray are free and home working and collecting money. But how do we, or this Kyle Rittenhouse kid, he's not a cop, and the judge, I don't want to trigger you with how horrible the judge is. But the judge is seems like he took a liking to that kid. Seems like he sees himself in Kyle. He wants to bring a big gun up and down the street and just kill people too. So I think the big question that we have to learn the correct language when we have these conversations is, what do we do with those people? I don't want to say what I want to do with them because I don't want to say it, but what are we doing? What is the language so that people listening and watching can use that language from you to be able to have that conversation in a way that's more effective?
Yeah, so I think one thing that we can stop doing is calling these outcomes justice. We can't say justice is served when a cop goes to prison, because what that does then is legitimize that same system and what they do to like millions of poor Black, brown, and white people all over this country. So that system, we have to recognize, is incapable of delivering any semblance of justice, right? The dead cannot participate and even decide what justice is for them. And that we just decide that this same judge is going to put so many more people in jail, and that it's justice when this one guy goes, it's wrong, right? Whatever is going to be the ceiling of punishment for those people is going to be the floor for the rest of us, right? It's going to be the floor. So like you said with your friend, right? A nonviolent drug offense, 16 years, right? That's going to be that's, you know, some people are spending life in prison over nonviolent drug offenses, right? When cops get punished, they get 4 years, if, you know, a year and a half, 7 years. The cop who killed Jason Van Dyke, who killed Laquan McDonald, Chicago, like
Laquan McDonald, yeah, Chicago.
6, 7 years, right? Lots of cops, even Peter Liang, who killed Kyle Gurley, was prosecuted, and the prosecutor asked, please don't sentence him to any time. This was an honest mistake. Right, this is an honest mistake. This murder was an honest mistake, and so it makes me so nervous that the thrust, the urge, the impulse to put cops in prisons, it doesn't make us think about the impact of the broader system. We're saying, well, if this cop needs to go to prison, well, anyone who does this kind of violence like should be in prison, and it's not true. So that's what I'm nervous about. For cops in particular, I think that we should make sure that cops get fired. Like, we need to make sure it's easy for cops to get fired. It's very difficult for cops to lose their job. So we have to make sure that cops get fired, that they aren't allowed to work in policing again, in any carceral institution, any private sector institution. Like, we have to do that. We have to figure out how to, you know, eliminate and reduce their ability to replicate that kind of harm. And so it doesn't mean that the other cops are good, but we should like remove those people from police departments, right?
Absolutely.
And not just rely on the judge to have the decision, or a jury, which is likely is going to make all these people get off. And so it's like, long term, like, we have to figure out how to remove their capacity to be violent. So we're all not trying to make a decision whether one person should go to jail, right? It's not all riding on George Zimmerman, or it's all not riding on Kyle Rittenhouse, right? It's not for Derek Chauvin to even be prosecuted, for these people to even be prosecuted in the first place. It took millions of people to pour into the streets.
The world. It took the world.
Right? 26 million people in America alone after George Floyd was murdered in May of last year. So is it sustainable to get 26 million people in the streets every time a cop kills someone? Like, that's just not going to happen. It's going to be what's caught on tape, what goes viral, right? And so that's not even a realistic option for people who care about freedom and justice.
So I was so great talking to you. I think we're at our time. Thank you, Charm City Books, for hosting us. Did you leave some signed copies at the store?
There should be tons of signed copies at the store.
Tons of signed copies at the store. Yes. Please pull up. Please support this book. It's very important. Had a great time reading it. As you can see, I can quote it like all day, and I don't even have it. Okay. But it's that good, and you guys will really enjoy it. Thank you, and have a blessed one, and enjoy your weekend.
Yes, enjoy your vacation, and thank you for taking time to do this. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem.
And to everyone watching, I hope you have a good evening.
Peace.